Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we are tackling wheels and axles. Now the original wheels profiles are good, but I want to do away with this boss on the back. Now the boss on the back, two grub screws holding that wheel to the axle. Now the original maker said it was to make it so you could re-gauge to 10 1/4 should you need to, but I'm going to do away with that. This is going to run solely at 7 1/4, so I'm going to do away with that. I'm also going to add a keyway to the wheel, and they're going to be a press fit, because currently the axles measure a shade under 40 millimeters and the bores are a shade over 40 millimeters. So I need to so that's coming at 40.2 and the axle is coming in at 39.2. So yeah, there's 0.1 mil of a difference there, so it's not even a sliding fit, it's a little bit oversized. So these wheels are going to get bored out and the boss is removed. The sprockets, they were also purely keyed on, and there's witness marks on the wheels where the grub screws were held. Say witness marks, they are dimpled for the grub screws, but I'm going to keyway those as well. Grub screws are still going to be employed. I'm going to actually cut the keyway through the grub screw here, so I can use the grub screw to secure the key, and also there's a secondary keyway here, so those keyways will be installed and grub screws reused, but I've bought new axle stock. So the idea is to manufacture new axles and change the bores. So they're going to be different bores as well. So I've got some 45mm bar stock, so I need to turn that down. It's 40mm as you buy it. It is bang on 45mm as you buy it. So that is just a shade over and then a shade under. So I'm not going to rely on the raw stock size. So I'm probably going to go 44mm on the sprockets and 42 or 43mm on the wheels to reduce the amount I actually have to turn down here. But I'm going to create shoulders for the wheels to set again, so I'm probably going to go to 42mm, so I've got a good shoulder for the wheel to reference against when they're pressed on, and 44mm for the sprockets in the center portion of the shaft. Also the ends need turning down to suit the bearing housings that are on the chassis. I'm going to have to dig the chassis out so I can get accurate measurements on my width for the axles, because both of these axles actually measure different lengths. Yeah, they're both different lengths. I'm just going to grab a tape measure and I'll measure these up. So just using a tape measure here, which is not the most accurate tool, but that one is measuring 446mm and that one is measuring 449mm. Overall length on both of them, 532mm, 531mm. So there are differences in length, so I'm going to make them match exactly. I'm going to turn the bearing the bearing journals down to suit the bearings that are fitted on the loco. I'm going to inspect those as well to make sure there's no damage or defects to those. So I want to make sure I've got good back-to-backs on the axle boxes, good back-to-backs on the wheels. I'm going to use Colin Edmondson's profile gauge here, which gives me a good back-to-back measurement, so I can hit the 7 1/4 society standards for narrow gauge. So that will be my basis of measurement. And yeah, it's going to be a bit boring doing those, a bit boring doing that, and should be able to turn things around. So enjoy the video. Okay, so now I've dragged the frames out of storage. I want to know the back-to-backs on the bearings. And unfortunately, my tape measure doesn't go in the hole. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get fairly close. And I've got about 447.5. 447.5. And 450. So there's about 2.5 mm discrepancy. Let me just check the frame back to back. So I'm at 498 there, and 498 there. That's at 498. That's at 502. Right, so they're splayed. Yeah. So where they're bolted to the frames down here, the weld off of this bar is actually preventing that axle box from sitting flat against the frame. So they're going to have to come off, and that's going to have to be addressed to square these up. So I'm going to go off of that measurement. And we'll go for 447. Don't like numbers that aren't round. I'm going to find a better way of measuring that. So, time to bust out the big guns. Now we'll go for a massive set of micrometers. Right, so let's see what we've got. $428.2 plus 20 mil for the thickness of those. 448.2. 451. So that needs rectifying. So, starting to get most perturbed because there is filler on all of the welds. I really don't know why. I'm sorry, but if you can't weld, don't weld. Now all that filler is going to have to come off, so I can inspect all the welds on all the joints. Because it feels like there's probably no weld on, and this thing is held together with glue. I have got it on every weld joint. Bloody hopeless. Another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hack these brake hangers off. They're really not up to the job. You can see how bent that one is, but my new brake hanger gear should solve that problem. And the front ones, again, they're only 3mm flat bar welded on just as single tabs, not even double tabbed. They're going to get changed as well. Now I'm going to start sounding like a stuck record here, but the crystallization here, that's showing 0 weld penetration on any of that weld, and that was welded here, and I believe that was part of the mount for the 90 degree yeah, the 90 degree gearbox. So that needs putting in again. I think I'm going to have to chop that out. I'm going to chop all of that frame out. Yeah, ultimately once this is welded back together, it's actually going to end up, 1, a lot stronger, and 2, a lot straighter. So now I'm pinging a little bit can't focus on one bit. So to facilitate me sorting the frames out, I need to get everything else sorted out, because I've just cut out the mount for not only the E7 but the mount for the 90-degree gearbox, which lives pretty much on the same line. But what I want to do is I want to address this thing is not square in the slightest. So I'm going to chop this up. I'm going to get everything straight, hopefully. So straighten up all the angles so I can get this, so I can fit it perfectly, hopefully. Yeah, really pinging now. Lost my train of thought completely. But there I'm at 37. There I can't even measure. I'm going to chop this apart, bolt this side to that side, see if it even sits level. Right, now I've found all the bits. So that's the mounting bracket for the 90-degree gear, which is that's going to get chopped up, I think, and just welded onto that support and also that support to make that uber strong. I've also got this to chop up, which goes onto this support, which also bolts into the side of the frame. I might put in some adjustability in that, so slot that hole and use that as an adjustment screw. But yeah, I want to get the top edge square, because it really isn't. So I'll chop that apart, square the ends to each other, get them back on there, hopefully get it all square, get it all welded up. Clean these up, ready for welding back into the frames. I think that's a bit of an achievable master plan. So I think I'm going to call it a day here. I want to go do some exploring of a railway in Halifax, but I've got this bracket's been remade. I may well have welded that on the wrong side, because I now have quite the alignment issue, so I'm probably out by about 3/4 of an inch. But that being said, I have remounted this sprocket further out, so I might trim a little bit off the back of that sprocket, I don't know, or ultimately move this plate this way to bring that back into alignment. But then I might come into chain fouling. But I've got the brake hangers chopped off, so that needs all the welds knocking off, which shouldn't really take much work. And then I'm going to put a big bit of shaping to it to get them back onto the chassis. axle boxes, I need to just go through, make sure everything's square. Yeah, there are some gaps between the plates. Yeah, especially on that one. But that'll be tomorrow's problem. So I'm going to go through all the axle boxes, get the axle boxes on so they are sitting parallel, because I had a little bit of a width issue at one end of the chassis, so I'll sort that out tomorrow. But yeah, not the day I expected to have. I was going to do wheels and axles, but I've got some work done on the chassis. I'm going to blow the paint off all the welds and see what happens with the chassis, because I've done a bit of grinding, but I want to make sure all these welds in these corners are all good. So I'm probably going to come in with a torch and burn all the paint and filler out of these, and then come back in and just over weld it, so it's not then going to be too much for a mission. I don't want to be chopping these frames completely apart, because that would really not be a fun time. But yeah, tomorrow I think get the axles mounted, so I can get my measurements made. I'm going to get the engine remounted so I can redo all the bracketry for the hydrostat and the gearbox, so I can work out where my sprocket's going to live on the axles. So I've got a lot of maths to do on the frame to get it all square, to get these all welded back in, and then I can have all my figures ready for doing my axles, my keyways and all of that, because I want to get it a lot closer than it was, because it's a little bit all over the place. But that being said, it's not been too bad a day. A little bit soul destroying, having to undo more work than I was planning on doing. But that being said, I'm going to have peace of mind when everything's perfect. But yeah, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.